We need to talk about something. Now, this clip that I'm going to play for you, it's not so much about calling out Nomiki, because honestly, I really want to have a discussion with Nomiki about this, because something that I've noticed, particularly coming from Majority Report, it seems like to me, I don't think they really understand how some people who are working class or are poor, or even some that are middle class, who canvassed for some of these candidates and who donated money to these candidates, I don't think they really understand why we are fed up and why we don't want to support them anymore. And that's part of this discussion. But I'm going to play the clip, but I did want to say that first. Like, do I have issues with some of the things Nomiki says? Absolutely, 100%. But the more I listen to her, the more I'm starting to realize I think they are in a bubble. I don't think that they are really interacting with everyday working class people, poor people. And I think that some of that's going to come across in this message. Now, there's some things that she says in this clip that I agree with, and there's some things that she says that I disagree with. But I do think that there needs to be a discussion had, because I think Nomiki is under the perception that people who are now being critical of squad members or being critical of Bernie Sanders are people that are trying to cultivate a right-wing audience, or people who have basically just given up, or whatever reasons, right? Instead of looking at the class issue, instead of looking at some of us need these tangibles right now, and some of us may have given our last $5 or $10 to these candidates because we believed in them. Now, maybe that's our fault. But when Justice Democrats was sold to us, it was sold as a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. Now, Nomiki did not start that organization, but I think for her to sit back and just pretend like we are being ridiculous or we're not being reasonable, I don't think that that's fair. And I think that when you are in a position where you are in a different class, and you come from a different class, and you don't know what it is like to actually struggle in this country, I think it is more difficult for you to grasp why some people are not going to play this game anymore. Now, in this clip that I'm about to show you, Nomiki Konst, and Emma's a part of this conversation too, although I think Emma's a little bit more reasonable in this discussion. There's a caller that calls in that starts asking questions about the Amazon union that just formed, and how AOC, didn't show up, and where should the focus have been. So let's go ahead and play that clip. I'm going to go ahead and bring myself to the back, and I really want you to pay attention to what the caller says here.
Let's take a call. Calling from a 706 number. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yes, this is you. Who's you?
I am Justin from Georgia.
Justin from Georgia. What's on your mind?
Saw some conflict, and this is like terminally online stuff, so apologies in advance, but I saw some conflict about like AOC's relevance towards the Amazon union vote that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, to what extent does it, I guess, matter to the left as a movement in general to deify or demonize, progressives who are the result of electoral politics? Like, how much
you should do neither, in my opinion.
Right. That's like where I'm coming from, because it seemed like so many people, I guess the time and energy that could have been used to focus on that
Mhm.
vote, and that union in particular was focused on like the people in politics and the relation to
Yes.
that vote, not the people themselves.
Well, let me just
Um,
reiterate what I said on the
no,
show yesterday. You might have missed this, Justin, but I basically said, she I did not love the way she responded on Twitter about it, in terms of like, kind of
She could have just responded to Christian and said, "You're right."
So let me jump in here for just a second. So the caller is basically saying that he kind of feels like he's wondering if it was a little bit unfair for people to fault AOC instead of just focusing on the fact that, hey, this was a big win for Chris Smalls and the organizers who were, trying to make this union happen, right? And he's questioning, should we be focusing on that? Like, should we focus on AOC? Is it something productive to do? So just to clear that up for you.
a blind spot. I should have been there, maybe, right? Like that she
Or
could
we'll make it up to you in the future.
right. But at the same time, right? I'm you can understand why she feels besieged, but like, she should have been there, right? I think
disagree.
that's oh, you
So again, Emma's telling you AOC should have been there. And I do just want to add, for people who are not aware, AOC did tell Chris Smalls and the other organizers that she would have been at that she was coming to that event. She did not show that day. And Jordan Sheraton interviewed them on the ground that day. You can find this video on Status Quo. If you go back, you can find it. And Jordan Sheraton interviewed them that day and asked them, like, what happened? Why isn't AOC here? And the response was they didn't know. She just ghosted them. She didn't show up. Later on, come to find out, apparently she said she was concerned about security. But then the organizers on the ground said that they were basically told that, I guess she thought it was her team thought it was too street. It was too thug. Their words, not mine. So again, you can find that video on Status Quo. It is still there, I'm sure. That goes a little bit more into detail of this. But again, Nomiki is shaking her head when Emma says this. So listen here.
okay.
Disagree. First off, the last time AOC got involved in an Amazon fight, Amazon started pouring all the money in. They did put a lot of money in, but they did it in a different way. This was not, it was kind of.
That doesn't make any sense. So because one time before, when AOC got involved with an Amazon event, Amazon poured in a lot of money. So because that happened, AOC shouldn't get involved again. What? I want to be clear here. Chris Smalls explained this on Professor Wolf's podcast that Amazon spent $25 million to try to stop Chris Smalls and the other organizers from forming a union. That was without AOC, okay? So just because that happened before, you don't try to fight again? I'm a little bit, I don't understand. I don't understand the logic here. And I want to reiterate and say this again. AOC said that she would be there. It's not like, people were hoping she would come. They asked her and she didn't respond. She said she was coming. So I think we need to put the responsibility back on the fact that she ghosted them. Let's just be clear about that. Let's go back into the video.
Better that they did this internal campaign, and granted it went on for a long time and they had an independent union, and I've talked to Chris about this and why, and there's a lot of pluses and minuses to attaching yourself to an existing union like RWDSU, like they did in Bessemer, and RWDSU is based here in New York, and having a full-fledged campaign with like national figures. It also puts a big target on your back, and slow and steady wins the race. It's
And this is where we have a problem. She said it also puts a big target on your back. I would argue that AOC already had a target on her back. I think that AOC has embraced celebrity culture. I think that when you look at the other members of the squad, who is on the cover of all the magazines, who's doing the most interviews, who was at the Met Gala, So AOC already had a target on her back. She has been saying since over a year ago that she was getting death threats, right? So she already had a target. So how are you going to put a target there that's already there? I just think these are excuses. Again, AOC said she would be at the events. So you broke your promise. She didn't break her promise to the Met Gala. Let's be real. I'm sorry, but Nomiki is pretending like AOC really is not in the wrong here. She's in the wrong. You tell workers and organizers you're going to be there to help them, especially you're a politician. You show up. You show up. You don't ghost them. Here we go. There's more. There's more.
I don't know. I think in retrospect, it's
that.
easy to say that.
I get that,
But-
right?
But also, like, I'm sorry, Krystal Ball, with all due respect, and she is a friend of mine. I live in Queens. I live in Astoria.
Let's jump in here for a second. You know what's really funny to me? I don't understand these podcasters that do these streams where they're like, so and so is my friend, but then they attack their friend on stream. Because, like, when I have disagreements with my friends, I damn sure don't attack them on live stream. By the way, I'm not friends with any of these people. I don't know any of them. But if I have a disagreement with my friend, I'll text my friend, I'll call my friend, I'll talk to them about this offline, not on a live stream. So if you guys are friends like that, why didn't you just have this conversation with her in private? Why are you blasting your friend on your live stream? This doesn't make any sense to me. And by the way, she just said she lives in Queens. She lives in Astoria. For those of you who are not aware, Astoria is a pretty affluent neighborhood in Queens. A lot of people hear Queens and they think it's like Queens coming to America, Queens. There's different parts of Queens. Queens is huge, and Astoria is a pretty affluent part. I'm very well familiar because I used to live in New York, and there weren't too many people that looked like me living in Astoria. Just keep that in mind, because this tells you a little bit about Nomiki's mindset. Here we go.
Literally half a mile away from where the first Amazon headquarters was going to be. You know who was the biggest advocate for that? AOC. You know who was not there? You. So if you sit here and you're playing who gets to be a progressive, queen or not, and you're more interested in knocking down the few allies we have, I'd like to know, where were you in Bernie 2016?
This is where I'm a little bit confused. Now, she just told you her and Krystal Ball are friends. I think we need to be careful about using the word ally, right? So she's like, you're going to knock down the few allies that we have. I don't know about you guys. I do not consider AOC to be an ally per se. She has shown a different side of herself, or a side of herself that I never thought that I would see when she was running for office. So I don't know if I want to put her in the ally bucket. But Nomiki goes on to say, you want to be like this progressive queen, and where were you, Bernie 16? What does that have to do with this particular issue? Look, all of us at some point came over to the left. I wasn't born a lefty. I voted for Obama, and let's be real here. Nomiki raised money for Obama. I'm pretty sure she wouldn't like it if someone said, whoa, well, where were you in 2012? You were raising money for Obama. Look, it took people time to get over to the left. Everybody has their own growth spurt. This is not me trying to defend Krystal Ball. I have criticisms of Krystal Ball, but I really don't think that that's fair. I didn't know there was a timeline as to when people were supposed to move over to the left. Did you guys know that? Is there a timeline? I didn't know about that. Didn't know about this timeline. And I just don't understand what this has to do with AOC ghosting organizers. Here we go.
Where were you in Bernie 2016? It's always convenient.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
2016.
Oh,
And be the progressive purist.
yeah. Well, look, I mean,
Do that.
Yeah.
it's a branding exercise for a show. Like, I'm less
I'm over it. It's just
I'm less
ripping
concerned
apart the
about that.
left.
But
Bro. Okay, let me look. Now she's saying that Krystal is trying to be a progressive purist, but Nomiki just criticized her for not being, I guess, involved for Bernie's 2016 campaign. That kind of sounds like some type of progressive purism to me too. Like, you're doing the same thing. I'm just so confused. I don't understand. Let's go back in. I got to rewind it a little bit. Hold on. There was something she said right about there.
And slow and steady wins the race. I don't know. I think in retrospect it's
that.
easy to say that.
I get that,
But-
right?
But also, like, I'm sorry, Krystal Ball, with all due respect, and she is a friend of mine. I live in Queens. I live in Astoria. I'm literally half a mile away from where the first Amazon headquarters was going to be. You know who was the biggest advocate for that? AOC. You know who was not there? You. So if you sit here and you're playing who gets to be a progressive, queen or not, and you're more interested.
I just want to chime in here and say, but Krystal Ball didn't say she would be there. See, Nomiki's leaving that out. Do I think that some of these commentators that have the large platforms could do more in reference to organizing? Absolutely, 100%. I think they could get out in the streets. I think they could use the platform that they have to bring more people out at these events. I really wish that Krystal Ball and Sagar would have mentioned the marches for Medicare for All that happened in this country, which they were silent on. I really do wish, yes, they could be better about that with their platforms. But Krystal Ball did not say she was going to be there. AOC did. So I'm a little confused.
In knocking down the few allies we have, I'd like to know, where were you in Bernie 2016? Where were you in Bernie 2016? It's always convenient.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
2016.
Oh,
And be the progressive purist.
yeah. Well, look, I mean,
Do that.
Yeah.
it's a branding exercise for a show. Like,
I'm over it. It's just
I'm less
ripping
concerned
apart the
about that.
left.
It's ripping apart the left. I'll just be honest with you guys. I started my show last year in January, and I started off interviewing progressive candidates. For those of you who are new that don't know that, that's how I started off my podcast, interviewing progressive candidates. The left was already fractured when I joined, when I started my show. I'm just being honest with you. It was already fractured. This was right after Force the Vote. There was a split over that. And I also noticed that the left started to split after Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign and told everybody to vote for Joe Biden. I remember that as well. So I think the blame here is going to the wrong people. And it's not just Krystal Ball. She's going to go on and mention other people too. I think the blame here should be put on the fact that, yes, there was a progressive movement and Bernie Sanders was the leader of that movement. Bernie Sanders left his movement. You have a movement with no leader. Nobody is running this ship. There's no one driving this bus. So people have gone in different directions. And I think some of this anger that she may have towards Krystal, if you're upset about the movement being divided, instead of blaming the podcasters, I really think you might need to look at the person who started the movement and walked away. Because how do you do that? How do you do that when you told people that even if you did not win, you would be right outside with the people? What happened to that? Hit that like button, guys. That really helps me with the algorithm. What happened to that? How could you? I just don't understand. Like, this is what's happening in this space. I've noticed is a lot of people are getting upset with each other. A lot of different podcasters, man, you said this and you said that. And I told you, like, I don't know majority of these people. I don't. Very few I actually know. And I mean, really know. But to me, it seems like her frustration is going in the wrong direction. Let's be clear. This wouldn't have even been an issue if AOC didn't have that tweet. AOC brought attention on herself. If AOC didn't tweet out those 3 muscle arms as if she was a part of something that she was not a part of, Krystal Ball wouldn't have had a tweet to respond to in the first damn place. Let's put that back on AOC. She did that. Now, was I kind of critical about the way that Krystal responded? Kinda. I mean, they all know each other. They have each other's numbers. They have contacts. Why couldn't you have this discussion off of Twitter? It was just weird to me. It was bizarre. Then Dan Price got in the mix talking about why he don't go on someone's show, and that had nothing to do with Amazon. It's just strange to me. It's just bizarre. I'll go back in.
But my point is just,
It's Roger Ailes politics, though. I'm going to continue with this. It's Roger Ailes politics. Roger Ailes picks fights, creates fights, rides fights, turns things. And frankly, AOC, she shouldn't have responded, frankly. If she said anything, she'd have been like, I'm really supportive of the union effort. Congratulations. We're really proud of everybody. And then move on. But to respond to a YouTube host who wasn't even on the left 5 years ago, I'm not saying.
See, okay. Bro, isn't she a YouTube host? Nomiki is also a YouTube host. Is this a degradable thing now to respond to a YouTube host? You're a YouTube host. What is happening here in this discussion? What is going on? I'm sorry. So AOC shouldn't have responded to Krystal because she's a YouTube host? Is that beneath Nomiki's? This rant makes no sense to me. I don't understand this. I just don't. This is a little strange. This is a little bizarre. She's talking about this as if she's not a YouTube host. And then she goes on to mention, well, you weren't even on the left 5 years ago. A lot of people weren't on the left 5 years ago. I know people weren't on the left 3 years ago. What's the point, Nomiki? You fundraised for Barack Obama in 2012. Should we pick you apart for not being on the left back then?
That like you can't evolve, but this is clearly an exercise here. And as much as I respect her and I like her and she's my friend, I just think that these choices are really dangerous and they're hurting the movement. And in 3 or 4 years, they're not going to look great.
There is no movement, Nomiki. There's no movement. This is really hurting the movement. Let's have a wake-up call for everybody who may not be aware. As long as I have known, Krystal Ball has done a show with Saagar. Saagar is not on the left. When I would watch Rising, you get 2 different perspectives. You'll get Krystal's perspective and you get Saagar's perspective. Again, Saagar is not on the left. So did Nomiki feel that it was hurting the movement back then too? Because Krystal was hosting a show with someone on the right? Does everybody see where I'm going with this? This does not make sense to me. But there is no movement. There's no one leading this. Bernie Sanders has told us Joe Biden is doing a good job on Krystal Ball's show, mind you. And Krystal pushed back on him a little bit, but there's no progressive movement right now. And this is why I honestly would like to have this conversation with Nomiki, because I feel like she is living in a bubble. I don't feel that she's meeting people like me and like some of you that are fed up with this bullshit, that are tired of the squad, that don't want to vote for either party, that don't really have the money to support a system that is controlled by Wall Street, and none of them are helping us. None of them are fighting for us like they said that they would. And I want to remind you, if you just joined, Justice Democrats was described as a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. I haven't seen any hostility, and I sure as hell have not seen no damn takeover. So people have a right to be upset. Let's go back in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust
Sorry.
her incentives at all, and I frankly
Justin, we're
agree
just gonna
about-
let you go and keep up our conversation if that's
Sorry,
all right.
Justin.
Yeah.
You triggered me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think my perspective on this issue is that if you do something like Chris Smalls did about unionizing a Amazon union, and you have problems with AOC, you have the right to air those, even if like there's concern that some people in the media are going to use as a branding exercise, or even if people aren't sort of convinced about the utility of making this about or firing back at AOC. Like, I think frankly, like, it's the kind of heat, it's a much.
And Matt is correct. You have the right to criticize. These people are not untouchable. Let me make something clear. We have the right to criticize the squad. We have the right to criticize Bernie Sanders. Just because they're on the left and we may be on the left, that doesn't mean we cannot critique them. And I've said this before. All politicians should be held accountable. None of them are above critique. I don't know, this whole idea of putting them on this pedestal where we're not supposed to critique them if we're on the left. Bullshit. They're not doing their damn job.
Much better heat than typically gets applied to AOC. I think it's one that could be constructive. But I do agree about media incentives to basically use this as a branding opportunity.
I'm 100% behind Chris in terms of like if he has it, based on just one, the fact of his enormous success, the fact that like he built this from the ground up in terms of, there was, as you mentioned, there were benefits to joining a larger union, but he was able to go about it his own way. And it's like this incredible story. And I feel that an over focus on her takes away from the victories of the organizers, even 100%. Though.
And I agree with what Emma says there about it takes away from the victory of the organizers, that the focus should be more so on Chris Smalls. I agree to that. But it was AOC who put the focus on herself in the first place. I just want to point that out.
His criticism, I'm way more willing to listen to that because he's on the ground there, and I think that that's valid, and he should be heard in that regard. But
he also didn't say what they're saying either. Go back and play the tape. That's the other.
That's not true. No, Nomiki's wrong here. That's actually not true. If you watch the videos that Jordan Sheraton has on Status Quo, Chris Smalls was critical of AOC. In fact, one of the videos on Twitter, I don't know where it's at now, I have to dig and find it, but Jordan asked him, like, what do you have to say, to AOC, anything you want to say? And Chris Smalls said, hell no, she don't deserve it. So that's actually not true. Nomiki saying, well, he didn't even say what they're saying. That's not true. They did say that she ghosted them. So I don't know if Nomiki has seen those videos from Status Quo or not, but I would highly recommend that she watch those videos, because what she's saying right here on this live stream is not true. She's making it seem like Crystal Ball just came up with this statement and it's not the same way that Chris Smalls feels, but that's not true, because Chris Smalls had said the same thing. In fact, he said it when the event happened and she didn't show. And he said it again on Status Quo after they won. So Nomiki is not telling the truth here.
Other thing, they used him, which is offensive. And sometimes people don't realize they're being used in this media game that I think is like really only benefiting the right wing and capital.
The Chris has.
Well, okay, I do agree with Nomiki saying sometimes people are used in media space. I do agree with that. I don't agree with the fact that it only benefits the right wing. I don't agree with that part. That's not necessarily true. Like, there is no end all be all. Look, there's no, this isn't a black and white thing, right? I think that she's looking at this from the lens of left and right. I'm looking at this from a class perspective. And I think this is where we're going to talk about in the call-in portion of the show. I want to talk about the class issue in reference to this, because it seems like to me, these two women, they seem to only want to focus on the left versus right and not the class perspective, the class dynamic. Why working class people don't want to do this anymore? Why poor people don't want to do this anymore? And why people who gave their last are criticizing the squad the way that they are now. I think they're not looking at this from the right perspective. They are still looking at it as though if you're not agreeing with us on the left, then you must be on the right, or you're trying to please the right. And that's not the case for every person. Some people are just fed the fuck up. Let's just be real.
The right to criticize. I really do feel that way. I mean, he is on the ground. Shows that are doing it, you know, I mean, shows that are now appealing to right-wing audiences more than they are to left-wing audiences, and we can put, you know,
The numbers are there.
Rising up there too, right? Or what? Sorry, what's it? What's it now?
The new one.
So now they're going to try to pretend like they don't know what Breaking Points is. Now they're going to try to pretend like they don't know the name of the show. This kills me. This kills me. This is hilarious. So Emma says now these shows are trying to appeal, you know, to more people on the right. Again, I'll say what I said a couple minutes ago. Krystal Ball, as long as I have known, has done a show with Sagar. Sagar is not on the left. Sagar is on the right. I don't know why they're pretending like this is a new thing. Not everybody that watches Breaking Points, not everybody that even watched Rising back when they were on the Hill, not everybody watches to hear the left perspective. Some people watch to hear the right perspective. That's just the reality. That's what happens when you have two hosts and one represents one side and the other one represents the other side. Why are they acting like this is a new thing?
Okay, whatever. But the point is that's a branding exercise, right? And that is I'm less sympathetic towards, and I don't think it looks good. But it's
it could be a branding exercise. I don't know, but I mean, they came from Rising. Rising is not just for the left. Hello. And Majority Report has millions of subscribers. Breaking Points does not have 1 million, not even 1 million. I don't understand what is this a jealousy thing? What's happening? What are you upset about? You guys are on a show where you have millions of subscribers. Breaking Points does not.
I'm interested in the organizers' opinions on this, and that's really
which they distorted, is what I'm saying. They didn't even say what he said. Now,
that's not true. They did not distort it. He did say that. Oh my God.
He did chime in on Twitter, and that's fair enough. But again, this is all distracting away. This is why unions and movements need to be militant. So we don't get distracted by when people are trying to create drama. Drama only is benefiting them. And
I don't think I'm gonna see Nomiki out in a militant movement. I do not think Nomiki is going to be a part of a revolution. I'm sorry. I don't see it. I don't see it. Someone prove me wrong.
You know, this is like a walking NFT exercise at this point. It's like influencer culture affecting the left. Really, it's what it is. It's like, how do we all boost each other? You know, these random accounts that pop up out of nowhere, and suddenly, you know, they're put on the Jimmy Dore show. And
random accounts. Here we go. These random accounts that pop up out of nowhere, and suddenly they're put on the Jimmy Dore show. Let me tell you what she means by random accounts. She's talking about the small channels. She's talking about people like me. Maybe not me particularly, or me personally, but she's talking about the smaller channels. That's what she's talking about. We're random accounts because she was not familiar with us, because we're not in her social circle, because we're not in these elite spaces, these elite journalist spaces, because we don't have a studio, because we're in our apartments or our homes and we don't have this fancy backdrop, because we don't have the money for that shit, doesn't mean that we're not telling the truth. She considers us to be random accounts. We're random. You guys know that? Let me shout out some of these super chats. Thanks so much for the super sticker, Oz. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the super chat, Yasmin. Amazon regularly tries to get Shama Sawant out of her seat. So Nomiki's point on AOC is ? Exactly. Yeah, they fought really hard against Shama Sawant and she still won. Thank you for the super chat, Delthea. Your word is your rep. Regardless of politics, if you say you're going to be somewhere, then you be somewhere. AOC should have been there, period. Oh, people going to hold you to your word. Thanks so much for the super sticker, Blue Moon. Appreciate you. Inquilabi says, Konst is militant in the sense she worked with NATO. Yes. Damn. Our kid said, Sabby, yes, you are 100%. The boutique or old left has started realizing they must course correct. Why? Because they are losing their fan base. Interesting. Delthea said Nomiki is losing it and it's not a good look. Yeah, this shit's questionable, bruh. This is questionable. Let's go back in. Let me take my random account ass to the back and let me go ahead and finish this clip.
They're put on, RT, and they're put on Aaron Mate's show, and then they all, influence off of each other, and they all create conflict off of each other. And when you really look at their numbers, it's the right wing following them. Well, but then we're all responding to it.
But
I don't know about that. Most of the people that follow me are on the left. I do have some conservative people that follow me, but it's not majority conservative. So look, bro, maybe you're just losing like viewership at Majority Report because people are tired of hearing the same thing over and over. I haven't watched, like, honestly, except for the clips that you guys send me to talk about, I haven't watched Majority Report since Michael Brooks died. And that's not an exaggeration. I'm just being honest with you.
Like they're the
like why this is less concerned is like this is a good pivot, frankly, for those energies. Like if all of a sudden they decide that we need to start helping unionize Amazon warehouses despite AOC, and that leads to actual more results like this, I think that's fine. And ultimately, if it doesn't, then we'll have like more to critique about why it didn't lead to anything productive. But I think like a lot, like Jimmy Dore, for instance, like if he wants to all of a sudden act like he's supporting unions for taking COVID safety seriously, I mean, it'd be news to the Chicago teachers that he was basically shaming into being that, saying they were fearmongers.
And this is how this unionization effort started, was out of COVID's lack of safety precautions in April 2020. That's what Chris was concerned about.
But why?
Oh my God. Yes. Because that apparently was Jimmy Dore's fault too. Nick was right when he told me that people have Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome. Is Jimmy Dore perfect? No. But these mofos try to blame Jimmy for every damn thing. The weather said it was going to be sunny. It rained today. It's Jimmy's fault. It just is. Every conversation somehow is Jimmy Dore's fault. Now, Nomiki sitting up here talking about Crystal Ball is dividing the left. But she didn't went on to smear Crystal Ball, who's supposed to be her friend, Jimmy Dore, random accounts. She's probably talking about me and Jackson Hinkle, maybe. And she's about to smear Aaron Mate too. Hold on. Here we go. Who's dividing here? She doing the same thing.
Among other things.
But that's why I guess like this is less concern to me, because it's like this is actually like a time for everyone to refocus. And we've said that too. We should have had more union organizers on this show. And towards.
Yes, they should have more union organizers on the show. Why don't they? That's the question. Instead of bringing Nina Turner on all the time, Why don't you have more union organizers on that show? Why don't you bring activists on that show? That's a good point.
Something that's real, because something good actually did happen. And I think like it's look it like I don't care about like Crystal Ball show. I never watch it, but like I feel like it's not this isn't the thing to hit them on. It's like the sort of like soft on like or sort of like trying to launder COVID libertarianism into the mainstream, like that stuff. If they want to try to brand over who's the more militant union
That's right.
supporting, good luck to them.
Well, because
and I hope that actually is
Sorry.
sincere.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Matt, but like it's also just like I feel it's like everyone understands that AOC supports the Amazon union effort. Everyone understands that. I mean, and like from an organizer's perspective, this is why I find Chris's case, or Chris Smalls' case, is compelling in terms of his critique. We could have used you, right? That's a fair case for him to make, and she has.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. It's one thing to support something. It's another thing to say you're going to be there and not show and just ghost people.
The right to say, you know, I could have done better, or this is where I was, this is why I wasn't able to do that. But no one is debating the fact that she supports the Amazon unionization effort. And so like then we're having a debate about tactics and whether she was there enough or whether she wasn't there enough. And that's when we're in this territory of, okay, we are completely making this historic victory in Staten Island about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And
it's a savior thing.
Is people who have media platforms and who like, you know, right-wing reactionary audiences eat up anti-AOC stuff. And they don't particularly care if it's coming from what you present as a left-wing perspective, or if it isn't genuinely left-wing perspective.
It's not just people on the right, though. And see, this is where I think the disconnect is. I don't think they're talking to people like me. I've never been conservative, never in my life. I've moved further and further left as I've grown older. But I don't think they get it. They think it's not just the right. It is, some of it is people on the left who supported AOC, who canvassed for AOC, who donated to AOC and other members of the squad and Bernie Sanders as well. And we have become disappointed, and we have given them multiple chances and opportunities, and we're just tired of it and we're done. It's not just people on the right. I feel like they don't really get it. They really, really don't.
Because, you know, if you're cultivating a show that's meant to appeal to leftists and bring actually right-wing people along, that's not really how you go about it, in my opinion, in terms of how it's been presented from a media perspective.
And they're picking away. They're picking away, constantly picking away.
You're picking away. You're picking away right now. You've already smeared You've already smeared like 2 people in the random accounts people. And you're about to smear Aaron Mate as well.
Like, oh, where can we? The second that Chris Smalls should have been the -- 1 trending and an ALU together should have been #1 trending, it immediately, just look at the trending topics on Twitter, immediately went down in the rankings for Krystal versus AOC.
Now that I do agree with. I did notice that, and I mentioned that on my show, that Crystal Ball was trending after that confrontation that she had with AOC. So I do agree with that. It should have been Chris Smalls that was trending. But again, AOC found a way to make it about her.
Who does that benefit? I mean, really, this isn't rocket science. If you're spending your time breaking apart a movement rather than congratulating it, and
there is no movement, Nomiki. See, Nomiki thinks that by those tweets that Crystal Ball had that destroyed or broke apart a move, there is no fucking movement. It's done. Did you guys know that one thread of a tweet destroyed the progressive movement. This is news to me.
Picking. You know, she's also setting AOC up as if she's some sort of deity. And that's what I find really fascinating is they're using the squad as if there are saviors.
But a lot of people think they are, Nomiki. That's a part of the problem. A lot of people think they are saviors. A lot of people thought Bernie Sanders was going to be a savior. Some of that has to do with some of the rhetoric that we heard from left independent media, that they were, again, it was going to be a hostile takeover, that they were going to save the day. So that's a big part of the problem. A lot of people thought that they were.
And it's just, you know, it's not productive. We as a movement need to understand how to work together and not depend on saviors. You know, AOC was put on a billboard.
She just said we need to learn how to work together as a movement, but she's smearing people. How you going to work with the people that you're smearing?
In Times Square after the Amazon headquarters was pushed out of Queens. She put on a billboard in Times Square. Amazon went after her. She gets how many death threats a day? This is, first off, this isn't solidarity.
A lot of politicians get death threats. Let's not pretend like this only happens to AOC. No offense, but you have people in left independent media that get death threats. You'd be surprised some of the things that people have said or sent to those of us over at RBN. I don't see nobody trying to protect us or coddle us. Let's be real. But this is not something that is unusual for a politician, especially one that is popular and that is treated more like a celebrity than a politician. I'm just going to be real.
This isn't feminism. This isn't leftist politics. This isn't even being a good host. This is cheap. It is a cheap attack, and it only benefits your ego and the right wing who puts you on Fox News. You can get on Fox News and you can talk about leftist things too. I do it all the time.
She tried to save herself there. She tried to save herself there because I was about to say when I first saw this, girl, you on Fox News a lot. So let's not.
Without compromising your values. Maybe you should try that.
Yeah, and there's another thing. Like, look, I want to table the AOC criticism because, like I said, like I think she's just backdrafting off of what Christian said. But I do think there's a bit of a tell there that I think people are right to be suspicious about, where she brings up the entire squad to try to smear Ilhan and stuff in that as well. And I think that is I don't think that's sort of like even advocate journalism. Like, I think that's a weird move to me.
I don't know if it's necessarily a weird move. I think people are pissed off. You got to understand people like Krystal and Kyle, and well, maybe not so much Sagar, but people like Krystal and Kyle, they spent years basically telling people that you should support those candidates, that you should support them, that you should canvass for them, volunteer for them. I know a lot of people that participated. So now they sitting back looking some kind of way because it's embarrassing to tell people that they were going to go in there and they were going to fight and they're going to do all this stuff for us and trying to make excuses for them for all these years. And yes, some things they were critical with them about, but some they were not. And then they see all this time has gone by. This isn't AOC's first term. This is her second. So they see all this time has gone by and no, they're really not going to fight for us. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It really is. I don't know.
Mercenary.
I mean, that doesn't really get more brave than Ilhan Omar in the way that she, has to navigate
And a
through
lot of these
Congress.
folks
And the
don't-
Ocasio-Cortez has a lot of bravery too.
Exactly. Like, a lot of these people, for whatever reason, don't have the, I guess, media bravery to go at Ilhan the way that they like to go at AOC. AOC is like the safe target now.
I criticize Ilhan Omar. So again, I think you guys are just focusing on the larger channels when some of the smaller channels are doing those things that he's talking about, like criticizing Ilhan Omar as well. That's the thing. They're only focusing on the larger channels. Again, the people in their circles.
And I just think that
Well,
part,
because you engender like a lot of, I mean, frankly, like there's a lot of people who have weird like like sexual attraction that they like manifest through anger online, and it's using that. That's my opinion.
Yep. And they're
Um,
avatars.
Let me get rid of all this sexual attraction and frustration I got built up, you guys. Let me get rid of all of that.
I mean, they're avatars for the left. AOC has become, this avatar for the left. And if you can show that she's imperfect, the right wing also loves to show the imperfections or what their perceived imperfections are on the left. So when you start to hear supposed leftists using the same tactics, that's really concerning. And, if you guys haven't noticed, they ride a wave.
No, I don't think it's concerning. And this is a big part of the problem is that I'm almost done, Eric. This is a big part of the problem is that it's almost like they feel like leftists shouldn't be able to criticize them. That because they're on the left and we're on the left, we shouldn't be able to criticize them. I disagree with that. I don't think any politician is above criticism.
Of a story, and then that story dies, and they have to find another story to arrive. It's they're constantly trying to feed their machine because they want to keep those numbers up and they want to keep the divides because they don't have, without Bernie there to solidify everybody, it's a great opportunity for them to break apart the left. But
and brand oneself.
Again, Bernie broke apart the left himself when he left his movement. Sorry. You can't blame all of this on Krystal. I have criticism of Krystal Ball, but this is not all her fault.
And brand.
And brand, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like bougie Green Partyism, even though the Green Parties, nobody talks about that anymore. But like that's what this sort of tendency is.
He said no one talks about the Green Party anymore. That's not true. See, again, these people live in a bubble. They're lost.
You guys.
Yeah.
Like all this would have gone away.
Agreed.
Or you could spend your time doing what Aaron Mate is doing, is denying genocide all day long, because that's also a path to making a lot of money on the internet.
And boom. I don't understand why Aaron Mate was brought into this discussion. He had nothing to do with the Amazon event. He had nothing to do with the exchange on Twitter between Krystal Ball and AOC. That was a low blow. I don't understand this obsession that Majority Report and TYT people have with Aaron Mate. I don't know if it's because he's like an investigative journalist. I don't know what it is, but that was a cheap shot. I don't understand why she just threw that in like that. What does that have to do with this? She just told you multiple times the left is being divided because God, Krystal Ball's tweet. We need to come together. The left needs to come together. And then she throws in another smear. In this one exchange, she smeared Krystal Ball, Jimmy Dore, and Aaron Mate.
You can make a lot of money on the internet. News to me. Emma's bankroll. I won $90 this weekend on the final.
Okay, let's get rid of that. You can make a lot of money on the internet, girl, please. Please.